It's Song Talk Radio.
Welcome to Song Talk Radio, the show with songwriters talking to other songwriters about the craft of songwriting. We share tips, tools, and techniques, and together we all become better at writing songs. Calling in from our Toronto headquarters, I'm Neil Modi, and with me, my co-host, Phil Emery. How you doing, Phil?
Not too bad. Calling in from St. John's, Newfoundland, as far east as you can get, but not as far east as our guest. Although maybe, it'd be more east than west, I think. That's right.
It's about as east gets for today, anyway.
Yes.
All right. And for the rest of us, please send your comments and questions to at Song Talk Radio on Facebook or Instagram, or feedback at songtalk.ca for the email, and we'll share your thoughts on the show. And please visit songtalk.ca to see the show post for this episode and to find links to resources we mention and to download lyric and chord sheets to follow along with the songs that we feature. Tonight, we're very happy to welcome back to the show singer-songwriter Colm Gavin. How you doing, Colm?
Good, Neil. How are you?
Great to have you back on the show. Thanks. We're doing quite well. And you're calling in all the way from, is it Dublin you're in?
Dublin, yeah. Particularly chilly Dublin. Anybody who's watching this will see like the cheap little radiator, portable radiator.
Of course.
Yeah. It's crucial at times like this. But yeah, good to talk.
Yeah. Always winter in the Northern Hemisphere here. Good. All right. Okay. And just a little bit about Colm. Colm Gavin has always been hugely inspired by the great American Songbook, particularly Jeremy Kern, Harold Arlen, Hoagie Carmichael, and their brilliant love ballads. Lyrically, Colm wanted this song that he's sharing tonight to be playful and honest. While I'm someone of simple means, goes wild for the finer things, a Paris balcony with a view, I'm more an early bird lunch for two. Very nice. Okay, let's get started here by listening to Colm Gavin's new song. This is called It's Starting to Feel Like Love. And remember, you can find the lyric sheet on the show post at songtalk.ca to follow along.
And make sure you listen to the chords. There's some really interesting chords, and pay attention to the melody. It twists around in a really, really cool way. So we're gonna have lots to talk about it, and it's and a simple song in some ways. There's not lots of, not a huge production, but really cool. Let's take a listen.
Did you ever know the birds to whistle in harmony? Breeze and trees keep in time, 'cause that's what she does to me. A melody autumn sings, but sweeter than all these things, endearing and nonchalant, and all I could ever want. She swears she won't kiss and tell, still we go like hand in glove. It's new though I can't deny, it's starting to feel like love. New though I can't deny, it's starting to feel like love. While I'm someone of simple means, she goes wild for the finer things. Paris balcony with a view, I'm more an early bird lunch for two. Charming beyond compare, a face I keep dreaming of, the moon dancing through her hair. It's starting to feel like love, a smile I see everywhere. It's starting to feel like love.
Beautiful.
Love
Thank
those
you.
chords.
Thanks, Phil.
So let's talk. Okay, you have this great. Is it going into on the fourth line of the verse? The because that's what she does to me. Is that where you're going into like you hit the minor? There's like a bit of a.
Are you talking about just before the instrumental break?
Well, just the first verse. The fourth line.
There's a little
verse,
twist on the third line. That's either borrowing or you're.
Well, I think it sounds like you're going like it's like you do a 5 major and then a 5 minor or something.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Oh, well, so I think what you're referring to is just before it goes. So we're coming back to the starting to feel like love, and instead of doing an F major, it's borrowing from the parallel key. It's going to an F minor.
Yeah,
and then there's
nice.
like an instrumental break, which is in A flat F minor, and then there's that do 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 do, which brings back to the F. It kind of acts like a 5 of B flat for that walk up the while I'm someone of simple me. That part, I think that's what you mean.
Yeah, there's like a secondary dominant thing happening there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's on the fourth.
Sure.
It's on the fourth line of the first verse, and I think you do it on the third or fourth line of the third stanza, I think.
Okay.
But and you do this really interesting, unexpected chord in the middle of one of the bits. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. I think it's still we go like hand in glove. It's no, we can't deny that part there. It's got this really unusual chord. Let's talk about that.
Harold Arlen was somebody who Neil mentioned in the introduction, and the process of writing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, if you're not familiar with, is fascinating. So Yip Harburg was the lyricist. Harold wrote the musical aspect of it. And initially, Meyer and Goldwyn Studios had hired one of their staff writers, a guy called Roger Eden, to take care of the entire musical arrangement for The Wizard of Oz. And at some point in 1938, Arlen and Harburg are subbed in, and the original piece that was written by Roger Eden was this sort of don't look like Paris, don't feel like Rome, but Kansas always feels like home, or something like that. That whatever the producers just felt that it didn't quite match the emotion that they were going for. And the story that Harold Arlen tells, or the process that they both had, was Yip would give a title and a couple of opening lines or a refrain to Harold, and he developed the music out of that. And on one particular evening, he tells this story really well. On a drive to the Chinese Theatre on Hollywood Boulevard, he asks his wife to drive. He's not feeling great for whatever particular reason. And as they get to Schwab's drugstore, which is literally just up the street on Funday, he says, pull in here. And he used to keep bits of blank music manuscript. And as he tells it, in that burst, he wrote what we know today to be Somewhere Over the Rainbow. The point I'm making is this: sometimes, because I write a lot for other artists, so in Ireland, particularly artists on the country music scene, and I have a great pleasure working with some great ones. Sinead Black is somebody who, she's an outstanding solo artist. We're working on a new record of hers at the moment, but she'll be very specific with the criteria. She'll say, okay, this has to be like a piano ballad. I want the theme to be like, one particular song was called First Dance of Forever. So writing to assignment is something that I like the challenge of it. And with this song, I'm a big fan of film noir, and I just pictured a Humphrey Bogart scene where he turns to his love interest and goes, Cynthia, it's really starting to feel like love. And then this kind of come in under it. So I was trying to deliberately use sort of Gershwin-y chords, if you know what I mean. Sorry, this is a really long-winded way of answering your question, Phil. But so a lot of those sort of four minors, or like, you know, an F in the bass with a G minor 7 type thing, to just kind of create that tension. Like the return to the refrain, feel like love, begins as like a B flat with an F in the bass and then resolves. So like a suspended fourth chord. But what I wanted there to be the whole way through it is that tension and release of the sweetness and astringency. Like the lyrics, a lot of the lyrics like are quite banal, like kiss and tell, hand in glove, moon dancing through her hair, and that type of thing. So I wanted the music really to be the bone of contention.
Yeah, it certainly feels that way. It's got that like I love that old the American Songbook approach to music. It's you know, and there's not a lot of repetition. There's not a lot of sort of really blank repetition through the song. Like it's almost every verse. And it's really mostly just verse. There's kind of a bridge, but there's not like a chorus.
There's a refrain.
Traditional chorus. Yeah, there's a refrain.
Exactly.
But
Exactly,
there's not a lot of repetition. It's a very short song, really. It's like 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's a slower song too. But there's not. It's almost each stanza is almost its separate thing. You know, it's interesting because there's not that repetition where so much music is just da 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 da. You know, it's so formulaic. But there's so many little bits to it.
Well, imagine how quickly it would have been over if I did the tap dance version.
Yeah, the super fast dance mix version.
Yeah.
30 seconds.
It's
really interesting, you know, those sorts of classical American songbook kind of chord choices, because like what I find that like if you were to do this as, you know, a pop song a la 2025, you know, it might be just a 1-4-5 kind of thing, right? But as soon as you start putting in those secondary dominants, you start like inserting things into the 1-4-5, so that it kind of extends the phrase, and like you say, builds up tension and release, and tension and release, and it kind of goes back and forth in a more it's a very smooth kind of journey, but at the same time, it's got those nice little details that really take us on this journey. And I find it interesting too how the song is structured, because you're right, it is literally like 5.5 verses with the little refrain of "it's starting to feel like love." Although the second time you hit "it's starting to feel like love," it didn't sound like you resolved back to the one the way you would expect. You sort of take us off to another direction, and then I guess that was the bridge part after that, you know. So it's interesting in those little details, and in the way that every verse is not the same. Even the rhyme structure, the rhyme pattern changes, so that it's a little bit unexpected, because in the second verse, you know, sings and things and nonchalant and want. And then you expect kiss and tell, and you expect the tell rhyme in the next verse, but then you go glove. And it's like, oh, where did that come from? So again, it's just these little, you know, I wouldn't even call them necessarily subtle. They're pretty out there, but they're soft and they're smooth, which makes it really cool.
Was that intentional, do you think? Or did you just sort of do it?
I'm trying to think back to, so the line that Neil's referring to about she swears she won't kiss and tell, but we go like hand in glove, I think comes after the musical interlude, like when we key change to the F minor. And I love, like, I'm a Gershwin nut, so lines like, though he may not be the man some girls think of as handsome, I love those, you know, that you don't really find around. Because even as Neil was saying, I'm thinking, Jesus, did I leave out a rhyme completely? But sometimes it's just like a lot of my lyrics are quite conversational. There's another song on the record called "What's It Like in LA," which is effectively like an email or a text message. So I guess I certainly wasn't following a meter strictly enough that I'd stop myself and say, okay, hold on a second, this is meant to be A B A B, so I'm going to go back and change this. I think it was more like stream of consciousness in that sense. And a lot of the song was built around that lyric, a Paris balcony with a view, I'm more an early bird lunch for two. You know, I wanted to be that kind of goofy, I wanted that goofy Woody Allen line in there somewhere. So I think I spent all my iambic pentameter money on that one, you know?
And it's an interesting approach from the verse with refrain, because the real, sort of the title of the song, "It's Starting to Feel Like Love," doesn't actually come through until the third stanza. So often when you have a refrain, it's part of the first stanza and the second and the third, and it's she's always a woman to me. It's like it was always solid there, but it's not solid in this song. It is almost like something that you would see in a musical, like not a jukebox musical. Which, if you're not really into musicals, there's a kind of musicals that were called jukebox musicals, and it's kind of like what Mamma Mia was. It was just they took the popular songs of the day and they sort of wove it into a movie, and they did it. And "Singing in the Rain" was in tons of movies before, the one that we all know of.
Sure.
But there's other ones where the song was written specifically for the movie, and this almost feels like it's written for something because it's not so pop song structured, which I like.
Yeah, there's a great song by the Carpenters called "Goodbye to Love," and "Goodbye to Love." Richard Carpenter tells this great story where he was on a trip to London, and in his hotel room, this old 40s Bing Crosby movie came on called "Rhythm on the River," and in it, it's about this songwriter who he's only written one big song, and it's called "Goodbye to Love," and they refer to it constantly in the movie, but you never hear it. So Richard thought, I'm going to write the song "Goodbye to Love." So he did. And I just love that. I love that notion of, rather than writing plainly from an emotion, thinking, where would this fit as not necessarily the centerpiece, but like for me, this song, not just because the word Paris is in it, but it feels very French. So I'm thinking, so even the melody, I wanted it to have something of the 20s about it, that you could almost hear it on one of those big clunky accordions, that type of thing. So it's got lots of those suspended fourths and lots of the Andalusian cadence, the major to minor modulation and stuff like that. So it's very much the antithesis to a pop song.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's still quite clearly a love song. And I'm just curious, like it sounds like you've got a lot of experience writing love songs. Just because there's a lot of like really nice imagery in there. It's very sweet, but not saccharine, like those sorts of things. Like if you were to talk to somebody who was just starting out and wanted to write a love song, what would you tell them in terms of advice of maybe do's and do nots of writing a love song, or just what kind of headspace do you need to be in to write a love song like this?
It's so funny, Neil, because the minute you start to talk about love songs, cliche is the word that comes up again and again and again. And it's very hard to avoid it, because naturally, if you want the sustenance, like if you want the meat and potatoes of a love ballad or a breakup song, there's certain cliches, there's certain repetitious themes that just almost have to come up as a matter of recourse, because otherwise it's not totally certain what you're talking about. And maybe in some cases that's a good thing. Like with this one, the move off to the minor is almost like some sort of reference to the bittersweet nature of how love is fleeting, love is handsome when it's new, don't build your nest at the top of a tree, the beauty of a young girl fades away. All these kind of folk turn of the century songs that warn young people, when with the new Dylan movie, that song, Silver Dagger, that old folk song, it's brought back into the fold. Don't sing love songs, you'll wake my mother. They're sort of singing up to the windowsill type. That's how I pictured this song being. And compared to an Ed Sheeran love song, they're two different. They're not just two different sides of the page, but they're two different books. So I suppose it depends on the love song you want to write, and it tends to be about how direct you want to be. Like you can litter something with metaphor and gorgeous imagery and stuff like that. And then as you quite appropriately use the word saccharine, it can just feel, too sweet to be wholesome. And this song, if it does anything, I hope can kind of poke fun at itself, that it's almost a parody of a love song in a way, because you get that cheesy line about, I'm someone of simple means, she goes wild for the finer things, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you're literally rhyming glove with love.
Like, don't make me feel any worse than I already do.
Right, but I don't know. Like it still works, and I think, yeah, I think you the first one of the first things you said in describing this song is that balance between the musical interest and the lyrical interest, and clearly I think you fall on this page too, is that this is much more musically interesting than it is necessarily lyrically interesting. Right. And that's okay, because like you say, like if it was really wrought with metaphor and really original, different kind of imagery and all the musical twists and turns, it might be a little too much. Like this one actually falls into a very sweet spot because it's complex in some ways and very, very simple in other ways.
I think the fact that it's musically complex, if you had that music complexity on a 4-minute song, that would be a very different kind of piece of art. It would be, kind of artistic jazz, and I think it would lose a certain amount of emotional resonance. The fact that it is so short and so focused, it never. I mean, the problem with complexity is it can be very, very exhausting for a lot of people if you're not used to hearing that kind of stuff. Some people love, the kind of jazz where it sounds like nobody's listening to each other, and they think that's the best thing ever. But for a lot of people, that's hard to listen to. And this is a complex song, but it doesn't go on too long, because I think if it did, it would be maybe a bit more of a challenge for someone. It's the perfect length for this kind of work to keep it sort of still approachable. Was this a melody first thing or a chords then melody?
Yeah, it was kind of both, Phil. And it's funny, like, just to comment on what you said, a lot of the time, this was part of an 8-track album. And when I'm putting together an album, it's a little bit like a box of chocolates, like a box of Whitmans. Maybe one orange chocolate in a box is enough, rather than every one of them or they're not all strawberry flavor. Some of them are hazelnut, whatever. Some people are allergic to nuts. So I'm always very conscious of, like what you said, if it was any longer, is it like a Brian Wilson schmoz? If it's one alongside a bunch of different songs, it's almost like the other ones justify its existence, if that makes sense. So, and with the ever declining interest in the form of the album, it worries me a little bit, because sometimes if you heard something out of context, you think, like, what even is this? This sounds like something from like French foreign film, and yet it's on a contemporary record. So, and again, sometimes you can justify a shorter song when there's other tracks on an album that might be 5 minutes or might be 4.5 minutes and stuff like that. So, I suppose after people listen to this, go listen to the album.
Is this a single, though? In your view, is this a single off the album?
It has been. So I've been lucky in Ireland. Typically with a record like this one, because there's a little bit of folk, there's jazz, it would be exclusively for alternative radio. And mainstream radio have been really good to it. And I often wonder, it's like when Frank Zappa and the Mothers got signed in '66. The recruit from Columbia heard one song, and it was the only blues pop song in their set. Mm-hmm. And he was like, yeah, they'll do. And then they heard Freak Out, and they're like, we made a huge mistake. And I think sometimes, radio producers listen to 1 or 2 tracks and think, yeah, that's palatable for radio. And then you start to play the rest of it. You think, we've gone down the rabbit hole. Yeah. So it's good. Whatever way you get the music played, Neil, it doesn't matter.
There is a bit of a loss now that people aren't listening to albums as a full work, to the way people used to listen to music, because it's a different experience than listening to a bunch of things at work,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
And there is something to be heard about a whole work, made of long and short songs, and that whole journey, which was a huge thing. But yeah, now, did you go back and forth on the chords, sort of sorting out those tasty bits, or was it kind of one and done?
I think because the melody was the first thing to come around in my head, I was following, okay, what makes sense to underscore that. So when I tend to have to think with two brains at once. So my harmonic brain is saying that's a lovely note to land on. But if I was to play this chord underneath it, it doesn't make sense to put, say, an augmented seven chord after that. You know what I mean? So I try to make musical choices that are as functional to the lyric as to the melody. So you, I tend to have it's like having a sidebar. Sometimes the lyrics are to this side of my head, and I'm conscious of I can't use that musical phrase because that's going to make the verse 2 times longer. And then other times, the melody has very much established already where it wants to go, and so then I'll curtail it a little bit. Like if something in my head on paper becomes a run-on sentence, I'm not precious about cutting something up.
So does that mean you wrote the lyric first for this then before you attacked the music, or?
No, I think I think I had the title, and so I had this little chord progression and a do 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 la da da dee da dee la da 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 do da 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 dee da dee, and then it's just sort of fitting in. It's like syntax, how beats to the line and that type of stuff. Like, does this word work here?
You decided upon phrasing.
Pretty much,
and that influences how long your lyrical lines are going to be.
For sure.
But at the same time, you can always. I find that kind of approach kind of interesting, because then do you then limit your thoughts lyrically to just individual phrases, or do you let thoughts spill over between lines? All those sorts of questions.
It's so true, and also how close am I getting to the initial idea? Because sometimes I don't know anybody who begins the process with a fully formed idea. It's like, do you know that expression? What's the easiest way to carve a horse out of stone? Chop away all the parts that don't look like a horse, like that idea. So there's always this part of me that I know vaguely what I want the idea to look like in 2 hours' time. I'm never going to get exactly close to that, but if it's somewhat like I wanted the narrator to be sort of like a goof, like she's into her expensive handbags, expensive shoes, the Milan runway and Fashion Week, and he's just this goofy guy who's happy with an early bird lunch and falling asleep beside the woman that he loves. So I as long as I had that somewhere, it justified the moon, June, kiss, tell, hand, glove lines, because he's a goof. This is the kind of guy he is. Now, sometimes, as Randy Newman says, when you're doing 50 down the freeway, you're not going to recognize irony. But for me, that was my only criteria, that the narrative had to show that he was like a hopeless romantic. He was a goof. And it never, it's not a conversation. There's no reciprocation. He never even alludes to, she tells me she loves me too. There's none of that. It's all in his head. So for all the listener knows, this could be like a one directional.
That's interesting. Yeah, because there's like two approaches to not just songwriting, but creative process in general. I would always say there's you can be the architect or the gardener. The architect knows what the final product looks like, and they work towards executing that and making it work like the final vision. Where the gardener just puts down the seeds and lets it grow the way that it's going to grow, and let it sort of organically happen, right? And there's no right or wrong. There's just two different approaches, and you can adopt both approaches to certain degrees in any creative exercise. Really, sometimes parts of the song may be gardener-like, and some maybe architect-like, whatever.
So what are the plans for this song now? Are you you said it's already been released as a single in Ireland?
To some radio stations it has. So again, like what you said about the fact that it has a niche quality to it. There were certain DJs who I knew this would be like DJs who would play stuff like by Jerome Kern or Hoagie Carmichael or stuff like that. So I kind of figured play it safe and send it to a few. But it hasn't. It for the moment it's just a track on an album. It hasn't had a mainstream release or anything like that. And I have a string of dates all over the place for the rest of the year, and it's starting to kind of become a mainstay of the set, which for a long time, you know, I don't know if you guys feel this, but some songs almost, even as you write them, feel like they'll be relegated to album tracks. And if people find them, fine. But slowly this has started to integrate itself more, which is lovely. But hugely, yeah, because again, as I wrote it, there's certain things, you know, as a writer, the first critic is you, but you always feel like there has to be something in it that's kind of exclusively for you. And I don't mean that in a way that like it alienates the audience, but that you won't get sick of it as quick as somebody else will. And that might just be one line, that might be one musical phrase, whatever it might be. But it's like, I'm doing this. And again, I say that, like, I don't make records thinking, okay, this has to follow whatever popular vernacular, wherever that's moving. But certainly, it's like spoiling yourself to a degree by, this is really, you know, no one's going to notice the nuance of this, but I will. So yeah, so the fact that now it's going to become a staple of the set, or at least a semi-permanent staple, is really nice.
Nice. That's great.
That's lovely.
Fantastic tune. I just love this one, actually.
Well, really, really, really nice. Okay,
it's right up my alley, you know?
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay, we're in the band. I think that's all the time we have on Song Talk Radio. Special thanks to Colm Gavin. Where can our listeners find out more about you and hear some more tunes?
There's probably the two best locations anyway on social media would be Facebook, so Colm Gavin Music, and on Instagram, Colm Gavin, all one word. And all my music is on Spotify and Deezer and iTunes and all those good places. So thank you guys for listening to the tune as well. I know how busy you are, so I really appreciate it.
No worries. That's what we do. All right. We love your new songs. All right. And we want to hear from you too. So please send us your comments on Facebook or Instagram to @SongTalkRadio, or send us an email, feedback@songtalk.ca. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel for live performance videos and full episodes. And subscribe today to the Song Talk Radio podcast on your favorite podcast provider. You can find links to all the products, books, and web services we mentioned on the show on our resources page on the website. And please join us at our next monthly Song Talk meetup. Whether you're in Toronto for our in-person meetups or anywhere in the world for our online meetups, it's free to join on meetup.com and free to attend. Bring a song and a lyric sheet and get constructive feedback from other songwriters. Stop by songtalk.ca for the link. You can follow me at neilmodi.com. You can follow Phil.
philmemory.ca.
And Colm, what's your favorite social media? Where do you go? Where do you post the most?
Oh, I'd say Instagram. So Colm Gavin on Instagram. Yeah.
Alrighty.
That's the one.
There. All right. Be sure to stop by the website, songtalk.ca, to browse past shows and find out how you can be a guest. Thanks for tuning in, and keep on writing.
Good night.
All right, that was great.
I really love this song. It was, it's like right. I love that kind of stuff. The, you know, those melodies are kind of deep and sort of and twist that way, and it's right up my alley.
Thanks so much. And honestly, I meant what I said. Like, thank you for taking the time to listen to it, because I know you guys, I don't know how you keep up with your schedule because it looks backbreaking. So, like, it's very much appreciated.
It's never ending. It is true.
I can imagine.
Have you ever heard a song? It's a piano, please, a piano piece called "The Graceful Ghost Rag."
No.
You would probably appreciate the melodies. I heard it once on the radio, like on CBC, back when I was in my 20s. And I just went, "What the hell is this?" And it's this amazing thing. It's this ragtime. It's a modern rag written, and it's got this wonderfully sort of deking kind of melody, and it's got all these weird, wonderful diminished chords. But it's very beautiful and melodic, and I think you would enjoy it. So,
Graceful Ghost Rag.
yes, see if
Gorgeous.
I can find the others. Yes, and it's
Cool.
another bit of interest. I'm living in St. John's, and Newfoundland has. Apparently some of the same accents as some of the smaller places in Ireland, because Newfoundland is basically made up of people from Ireland.
I watched a program about this the other day, and it's frightening.
Yeah.
Frightening. Like, if you told me that they were from, so there's a city called Dundalk, which is towards the north of Ireland, I would totally believe it. Like, it is terrifyingly accurate. But it's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you do it, Phil? Can you do that voice?
Yeah. That's only because but I just do like Father Ted. So it's not really Newfoundland stuff. I just do Father Ted accents.
Oh, he's not
I hear,
native
I
Newfoundlander.
hear you're a racist father.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah,
How do you get involved in that type of thing? I don't have much time for the racism.
Yeah, it was the Greeks. The Greeks, father.
Damn Greeks. I love that
It's
show.
always
I've
been
watched
so
it.
interesting that everyone, wherever you're from, you don't think you have an accent. Like, I have a Toronto accent. I don't know. Is it a Toronto accent?
Well, I suppose, the whole a boat, isn't that more like Edmonton, Alberta than it is?
think more so, yeah.
Yeah, very Western. It's also northern U.S., like Minnesota, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Or like, the way somebody like Jordan Peterson talks, like ending sentences with A. And it's not that hard, eh?
That's very
It's not that hard.
Yeah.
Yes. The man who's slowly becoming a Batman villain. He's just wearing all these wacky clothes all the time now.
Yeah, a little bit like the Penguin.
Yeah, he is. But great stuff. I really love the song. Yeah.
Terrific. Well, thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
We'll give you a heads up when the podcast drops, and you can share it with all your peeps.
Yeah.
Do you know, is it usually a week from the show?
About a week, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Sounds great.
Cool, man.
Awesome. Yeah, and sorry for the confusion before, but we got you on, and
Totally fine. I completely understand. So great to do it.
all right.
Excellent.
All right.
Okay, guys.
Thanks so much, man.
Have a good night,
Take
Phil.
care.
Take care of yourself.
Cheers.
See you very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.